This is the Microsoft Cloud Show, episode 29. We're going to talk to CJ about some of the latest news he's heard announced at TechEd in Houston, May 2014. Welcome to the Microsoft Cloud Show, the only place to stay up to date on everything going on in the Microsoft Cloud world, including Windows Azure, Office 365, SharePoint, Exchange, Lync, and related technologies. Just the information, no marketing, no BS. I'm Andrew Connell.
And I'm Chris Johnson.
And we're just two dudes telling you how we see it. All right, here we are with episode 29. So today, I'm just going to talk to CJ a little bit about what announcements he's hearing at TechEd North America out in Houston. So first, how are you doing today, CJ?
Pretty good, thank you. Pretty good. It's nice and toasty down here in Houston, but also very humid. So not really something I'm all that used to.
Welcome to my neck of the woods. I'm not in Houston, but their weather is very similar to where I am. So it's I was doing a bunch of yard work this weekend, and I think I went through about 2 gallons of water, and just in the morning, just sweating like crazy. So
yeah, it's funny. You live in a place where you need to take water on, and then everybody in Washington, where I live, complains about there being too much water that they're absorbing.
Yeah, we sweat it. We take it in and dump it right out. We just kind of sweat it right out.
Oh yeah, let's not go there. Anyway.
Yeah, it's all good.
Nice. And how about you?
It's been going good. Just staying busy, working on a couple different projects, and nothing crazy to report on. Just same old. So
excellent.
I did just one little recap, I guess. In the last episode that we published, we asked people at the end of the episode and put a blog post out asking people about some feedback, to kind of do a tapping the mic and asking if this thing is on. If anybody listens to this, if they really enjoy it, what do they think? If they don't enjoy it, what do they think? And we had a couple people actually wrote something in, and then we got one comment that stood out, I know, to both you and I, but it took me off guard. And we asked his permission if we could read it on the show, so I'll go ahead and do that now. His name is, I apologize right now if I mispronounce your last name, but his name is Greg Edinburgh. And he says, I have come to rely on you guys for up-to-date cloud news. I'm a SharePoint Online / Office 365 developer, and I've been able to cut down on the number of blog posts that I have to read each week to stay on top of the news. The bottom line, I'm more productive because of this show. The initial premise that drew me in was that you guys would digest this information quicker than me and therefore make it useful. Please continue to do that. Mark Anderson was popular because the subject was very high. I believe he means the Mark Anderson interview that we did.
Yeah.
And he said it's also very near and dear to every cloud developer's pain point. Thank you for the time you guys put into this. So, Greg, thank you very much. Really appreciate that comment. That's stuff that we were kind of feedback. Of course, that kind of specific feedback, that's exactly what we were hoping somebody would say. But in general, we were hoping that people would give us some feedback like that. So I really do appreciate it, Greg.
Oh, that's awesome. It just makes me grin from ear to ear hearing that somebody's getting value out of what we're doing. So
yep,
that's really, really great. Thanks, Greg.
Yep. Yeah, and so this show, we got a couple ideas for some other shows. Some people have submitted some ideas as well. We got a couple things in the hopper and got a couple interviews lined up. And we started the show initially to say we weren't going to do any interviews, but we've done one or two, and they've been quite popular. So we're going to do them, still line them up every here and there and throw them in as well. And I believe it might be the next episode, or like in the next couple of weeks, in the next week or something like that, next few days. I'm not really sure what the timing is, but an interview that you and I did, I haven't told you this, Chris, but the interview that you and I did with Rob Foster at the SharePoint Pod Show, he's mixed the show and everything, and so it's supposed to be coming out fairly soon. I listened to it a bit, but it's interesting because I know we did the interview, I'd say it was like late 2013, like November, December timeframe of 2013, and the show's going to come out about now. So there are some things that are going to be a little bit dated. I think
I think I was still working in my previous job.
You were working at your previous job, and I think we made a comment about how we had just mixed and published episode 8 of the podcast of our podcast.
Wow,
So
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but this being 29, it's we've moved along a good bit, but it's cool. It's gonna be kind of interesting to see how as I was listening to it, it's like things have changed, but at any rate,
that'll be fun to listen back on.
Yeah. So another thing that somebody asked us. And some of the feedback was they asked, they asked us to do make a little comment every once in a while on the show to kind of where you and I would be. Where can people find us? What conferences or what events are we going to be at? So I'll ask you first. You got any events that are coming up where you're speaking or you're going to be at when people can come find you, other than TechEd?
Yeah, well, other than TechEd, so this week is TechEd in Houston, obviously, and so I'm here at the moment, and I'm holed up in my hotel room actually recording this. So thanks for sorry for the poor sound quality, but never mind. So following this, the next show I'm going to is the Worldwide Partner Conference, which is in DC, and that's the 13th through the 17th of July.
Washington, DC, right?
Yes, sorry, Washington, D.C. WPC is for short, Worldwide Partner Conference. It's a big Microsoft event. It's pretty large. Usually it's about 12,000 people or so it's a big one. And then later in July, on the 23rd and 22nd and 23rd, I'll be at Debbie Island's conference in New Zealand, the SharePoint conference down there. So she puts on the SharePoint conference in New Zealand, and there's one in Australia that she does as well, that are quite close. But I'll be just going to the New Zealand one, and that's because the Australian one happens to overlap with WPC, so I can't go to both, unfortunately. So that's July. So that's WPC followed by a SharePoint conference in New Zealand, and then in September I'm going and speaking at SharePoint-A-Loser. So this is from the 12th and 13th of September. This is a conference. It's quite an organic kind of grassroots conference organized by Mark Rackley. It's in Branson, Missouri, which is a fascinating place. I've been there once before and thoroughly enjoyed my time. So SharePointALoser.org. Registrations are open now, and so you can go sign up for that. It's a 2-day thing, but there's going to be bands and sessions and all that sort of stuff. And I'm one of the keynotes, along with Steve Smith from the UK, actually, who's doing another one of the keynotes for that event. That's a real grassroots event, right? So it's always a load of fun to go to and get involved in.
Yeah, that's one I've always...
finally, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's one that I've always wanted. I know I shouldn't say always, because this is only the second one, I believe, right? This is the second time he's put this on.
I think so. Yeah, I think in Branson. Yeah.
I've wanted to do this last year, and then I wanted to do it this year, and just scheduling conflicts just weren't very nice to me. So hopefully next year. So we'll see.
Right. So I urge anybody that's in that area to go to SharePointALoser.org, and we'll link off to it in the show notes, and go sign up for the event. There's a real small charge involved because they're doing a whole lot of things around entertainment and bands and T-shirts and stuff like that. So there is a small fee for that one. And then in November 18th and 19th, I'm going to Amsterdam to go talk at SharePoint Connect, which is a conference over there. So that's going to be exciting. That's going to be my first conference over in Europe for a little while, and I'm looking forward to going to it. It's going to be great fun and good opportunity to get over to that neck of the woods.
Oh, very cool. Sounds like a lot of fun. A lot of busy summer and fall heading for you.
Yeah, there's a few others that are sort of percolating too. So there's SPTechCon in Boston. Potentially, I'm not 100% on that one yet, but talking with those guys. So we'll see if I can get to that.
Very cool.
Yeah. How about yourself? What does the rest of your year look like?
It's not as crazy as it usually gets, which is nice. I think I'm only doing 3 more conferences this year. So I'm teaching. As my next gig is I'm teaching at what's called the Great SharePoint Adventure. It's a 5-day developer classroom training for critical path training up in the Boston area. It's kind of nice. We teach in the Microsoft Cambridge office. That's the first week of June. So there's obviously registration built into that. So if anybody's interested, make sure you go register for that. That one sells out. And then later in June, the week of, I guess I'm picking it up halfway through, but there's a thing called the SharePoint Evolutions. It's a conference that Steve Smith, you just mentioned him a minute ago, you're keynoting with him at the SharePoint Palooza. He puts on a conference usually every year. And this year he's doing something called the Roadshow. It's a little bit different because he usually does his show in April, and he didn't want to go right up against the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas that we had around the same time he does his show. So he's doing a Roadshow, and I can't remember exactly where it starts, but it starts in the southern part of the UK, and just does like a little every other day or every day hits a different city like London or Aberdeen, and just kind of moves all the way up from the southern part of the UK all the way up into Scotland, and then jumps over to Ireland, to Northern Ireland, and makes its way down to Dublin. So I'm going to be at the Newcastle, the Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Belfast, and Dublin events to do a couple sessions there. And then I am going to really enjoy taking all of July and August off from all business travel, it appears.
Nice.
And then
very nice.
September, I hope to see you at SPTechCon in Boston. I just got confirmed that I've got a workshop and 3 breakout sessions. Also doing a conference in down in Orlando called SPLive, and that's the one that I'm one of the co-chairs for that conference. And so we are actively picking sessions and speakers and organizing the agenda. And I believe we got everything all selected and sorted and organized, and we're just in the final little bits of that. So just working on trying to figure out what we're going to do about a keynote and some other things to kind of get that kind of put together. So that's what it looks like for me going forward. I think I'm teaching another class for critical path training too in the Tampa area later this fall as well. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but that's
cool.
Months away.
Yeah, it's funny that, my wife just the other day said, "Oh God, we better think about Christmas." I'm like, well, that's a long way away. And she's like, "Yeah, but it's rapidly sneaking up." And then I look at the sort of the list of events and the list of trips and the various work things I've got to go do. And she's right. Like it's Christmas is going to be right around the corner before I know it.
Yeah, it was funny because I was with my parents this weekend. We live in the same city, and my mom was asking, so what are y'all's plans this summer? Are we going to be able to go do any kind of vacations or anything this summer? I'm like, you're kidding me, right? It's like early May, and you're just now asking me about this. We've been the whole summer is planned away, kids in camps, and but at any rate, well. Cool. So, again, what we want to do is talk about on this show, enough about you and me.
Yeah, fair enough.
And what we want to do in this show, we had a couple ideas for different show episodes lined up. But in this one, since you're at TechEd, and we're actually in one of the rare feats, we're actually recording the show the day before we go live with it. Today, or at least that's the plan. If it goes out tomorrow, then we'll find out if that was true. Tomorrow being Tuesday, May the 13th. So today was the first day of TechEd in TechEd North America 2014 in Houston, and there was a bunch of different announcements that went on. You're there. You were in the keynote room. So we got a couple things just to ask you about, just to give people a little bit of an update on what they might have missed out, and give it to them, and we can give it to them more in the abridged version instead of the long form 2-hour keynote or hour and 30-minute keynote. So
yeah, I mean,
before we do that, just
epic.
real quick, there is a survey that Microsoft has put out. It's the 4th annual version of this survey. It's the Cloud Competing Survey. We'll have a link to this in the show notes for anybody that's trying to take notes on this. If you just go to surveymonkey.com/S as in Sam /Microsoft, N as in Nancy, and B as in Bravo. That'll take you to a little survey that Microsoft's collecting a bunch of responses, and then they'll publish the report from those responses in due time. So that would be one I definitely would recommend all of our listeners go take a look at. So for TechEd, let's dive into the announcements here. The only one that I know anything about, because you're the one that's there, I'll go ahead and do mine first, and then we'll ask you about all the other ones. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. So the first one that I saw, this is pretty simple, is the they announced that for the Azure virtual machines, the compute-intensive instances. Now, these are the ones that are they go by the code names A8 and A9, and they have either 8 virtual cores or 16 cores, and then the amount of memory that's allocated to them is either 56 gigs or 112 gigs, and their networking is crazy networking inbound on these guys. It's 40 gigabits, 40 gigabit infinity band. The announcement for this one is that they've gone from preview to general availability for anybody to go can go create instances on those guys. They're not cheap. You're looking at them at the cheapest data center. I believe they're about from the A8 instance is $2.45 an hour, which comes out to about $1,800 a month. And the A9 is up to $4.90 an hour, which comes out to about $3,700. So you got some really intensive things you got to do. Those are great instances, and if you are, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people use those just to fire it up to get a bunch of work done and then shut them down, so they don't have this $3,000 bill at the end of the month for their VM.
Yeah, those are big boys, right? Those VMs.
Yeah. So let's stick on the theme of Azure, the Azure Cloud news. So I heard about something called the Azure Management API. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so this was a really cool new service in Azure, and so at first when you hear Azure API Management Service, you think, oh, it's going to be a bunch of new APIs for Azure, but in fact, what it really is it's a tool for those who are building and deploying APIs into Azure. So for your SaaS product or your app or what have you, you might have, say, a web service or an API that you let people call. And so what the Azure API Management Service lets you do is it sort of fronts your API. It puts a proxy, if you will, between your customers and your API. And then it allows you to do some interesting things with it. So it monitors the API usage. It can show you how many people are calling it and so forth. It can show you statistics on those sorts of things. But the other thing it can also do is it can give a nice set of help pages, documentation, and samples right out of the box for those who want to consume your API. So, you front your API with this thing, and then it'll be able to give your users and your developers a nice front-end tool to be able to learn how to use your API and to get up and running with it. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty nifty.
Yeah, I remember when I saw the thing earlier today when it talked about an Azure Management API, and listening to it or looking at some of the notes that came out, I thought it was exactly what you said it wasn't, which is, they've got new management APIs for able to get in. I wonder how these are different from the other ones. So not at all what that is.
Yeah, that was. I think it's really going to be quite cool for, because one of the challenges is, you go deploy a web API or a web service or something like that, and you want insights into how people are using it and how often. And unless you roll your own analytics, that's quite hard to do. And so I think this will solve that problem really cleanly and nicely.
Interesting. So another one that I saw, and I guess let's stick with I know there's a couple Office 365 and Office related things. So let's try and stay with the Azure stuff. I saw something about ExpressRoute and hybrid cloud networking technology.
Yeah. ExpressRoute is, so you know how we've spoken on the show before about site-to-site VPNs and point-to-site VPNs?
Yes.
So this is kind of along similar lines, except Azure ExpressRoute lets you set up a dedicated sort of tunnel, if you will, or dedicated connection into the Azure data centers from your on-prem environment, but it doesn't do it over the public internet. So the way it does this is you have to be on a particular networking partner like AT&T, Equinix, Verizon, BT, and Level 3 they've got listed here. And so, and there's some others, Telecity Group, Singtel, and Zadara. So you have to be on one of these telcos, and they provide you one of these sort of dedicated pipes straight into the Azure data center. And so that's nice because it means that you've got, there's much more sort of enterprise grade connections now, as opposed to these VPNs over the internet. to get right into your environments that you might have hosted up in Azure. So you can, I guess these telcos provide, dedicated bandwidth options and all these variations of different tiers and that sort of thing that you can buy from them.
I guess that kind of just makes it seem like you have your local on-prem environments now are almost can be seen as just living inside of Azure if you got that kind of dedicated speed. Having all your stuff you really are out of the infrastructure business, but you get to maintain the nice powerful connection.
Exactly.
So it's like it's on-prem. You don't have that little bit of a delay being over the WAN.
Yeah, I mean, you could do this with a site-to-site connection between, your enterprise firewall, maybe a Cisco firewall or something like that, and then it would automatically create a site-to-site VPN between it and Azure, so it all looked like it was on your network anyway, but it was over the public internet, so there's varying qualities of connection and different, bandwidth issues and all that sort of stuff. So this just gives a much more bulletproof, kind of robust and enterprise-grade connection.
Ah, cool. Now, does that play into this thing I saw about Windows as a service at all, or?
So yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, you're talking about remote app.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called the Remote App Service, and that basically is a way to run, Windows client apps, but in the cloud.
So kind of like a Citrix kind of a thing.
Yes. And I'm not a major expert on this stuff. So we may need to get. I've got some mates who could come on the show and talk more about this, but that's how I understand it. Yeah, that it's kind of like remote desktop for apps.
Oh, very cool. And I saw a little bit of news, both from the news out of TechEd, and then it seems like Scott Hanselman's got a blog post that went out today that is, I think, number 1 or number 2 or number 3, somewhere around there on Hacker News that everyone's kind of upvoting. Some stuff around ASP.NET that seemed pretty big. Did you see that in the keynote? Or?
Yeah, no, he was doing that in the session right after the keynote. So there was kind of like a sort of foundational session. But as I understand it, they talked about ASP.NET vNext, which was codenamed Project K, which sounds awfully sinister, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds like a Doctor Who kind of a thing.
Project K. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. And so it's basically like it's a much more sort of cloud optimized. It's the words that, some of the words they're using, cloud optimized version of .NET. Sort of best suited for running in that environment, and then a whole lot of updates to ASP.NET and things that they're doing to help build stuff for the cloud. Everything from the open web interface for .NET, so Owen, are you familiar with that?
Yep.
Yeah, all the way through to things that they're doing with .NET and Xamarin and all these sorts of things. So. I need to catch up on all of the stuff in that session, but I think you'll start seeing more, higher release of cadence of some of the .NET improvements going forward as well now.
Sounds like a lot more open, even though it's open source, being a lot more open and being more cross-platform kind of a stuff potentially.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the talk of TechEd. To be fair, that's the talk of TechEd. There's a lot of talk about multi-device, sort of cross-platform. Stuff with Xamarin and .NET and iOS and Android and things like that. So it's definitely a different kind of feel this year.
Ah, very cool. Yeah, I heard a similar interview from Mary Jo Foley on the .NET Rock show, where she said that build seemed like it was very much the same way too. Things were a lot more open, people were a lot more energized.
Yeah.
So. Well, you got to. If you go into the cloud, you got to be open.
Exactly. I think that. Yeah. So one other piece of news on that is Visual Studio 2013 Update 2 is released to manufacturing. And that also coincides with some new Office 365 tooling and APIs. Some libraries that are available for the Office 365 APIs.
That's cool.
So there's a post that I'll also link to in the show notes off to the Office blogs blog on this entitled .NET and JavaScript Libraries for Office 365 APIs. And so that post is from our friend Chax over in the Visual Studio team. And talks about a new set of tools or a new release of the tools that you can download for better Visual Studio integration and things like that, along with some client library APIs, wrappers, for those 365 APIs.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we'll link off to that in the show notes.
Cool. Okay, so that's a bunch of Azure and I guess I don't want to call it general dev, but non-product focused dev. So let's talk a little bit about stuff that was discussed around Office 365 today. So what is this thing called Fort Knox?
Oh, right. So that is a code name. First up, that's a code name, but it is. So there's a new announcement at TechEd this morning was about encrypted storage in Office 365. So this is all about addressing the concern of encryption of data at rest, right? So behind the scenes, where your documents live and all that sort of stuff, ensuring that when you put a document into, say, OneDrive for Business, that the document is securely stored in Office 365 and in an encrypted state, so that it's obviously much more protected than it would be just sort of in raw format on a disk somewhere. So this is coming in, I believe, late June or July. I think the announcement was for July, and it was codenamed Fort Knox, but it's basically encryption per file that sits in OneDrive for Business or SharePoint Online for that matter. So all these documents are stored, encrypted. They move around between different blobs behind the scenes. So all your documents are not just necessarily all in one place, stored in the same spot, and they're not encrypted all with the same key. So it's a pretty sophisticated encryption system to sort of to protect against data going walkabouts.
Very cool. That's got to be in line with one of the what's it called, the encryption or the secrecy, privacy, whatever you call them, the guidelines and stuff that the different governments are starting to come up with in response to all the news over the last winter from the stuff being leaked.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more detail on this. You know how you'd normally, in a SharePoint on-prem deployment, you put a document in a library or put, say, 10 documents in a library in the same site, and it would all go into the same database behind the scenes. So now in 365, your documents are going to be spread across different Azure storage containers, and they're all going to have different credentials. And also the map of where files sit in all of those different storage containers is also encrypted.
Oh, that's going to be a nightmare to try and put those back together, but that's the point.
That is the point. Yeah.
Nothing that a person could do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Cool. Okay, and so that's the encrypted storage you're talking about with Fort Knox data at rest and everything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So any news about Office, any other news about Office that you saw?
Yeah, there's so although it wasn't specifically announced at TechEd in the keynote, at least not that I heard, although there was a hell of a lot covered in the keynote, so I could have missed this, there's another blog post that just went up this morning on Office for the iPad, and it now includes printing capabilities. So that was one of the big sort of missing features that people really noticed. I'm not a big iPad user, but I heard some news or some noise at the time about when Office for the iPad came out and how people wanted to be able to print. So that's now possible.
You mean like that stuff that made of trees, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Papyrus, is that it?
Yeah.
So this hooks up with AirPrint, the Apple printing technology.
Oh, that's Wi-Fi. Very cool.
So you can print, to a printer that you've already hooked up or that you can connect to on the network over Wi-Fi.
Have you you ever seen that? Have you ever tried that? The AirPrint, how that works?
I have. Although admittedly it was a long time ago when it first came out.
Oh my God, that is absolutely awesome. I bought a printer in our house. I have one in my home office. We have a 2-story house, and my wife was begging for a printer downstairs. She ends up doing homework a lot with the kids downstairs, or with my son downstairs, and not doing it up in his room. So it would have been easier to have one downstairs. And we went and found one. I think I found like a $50 printer on Amazon, and oh my gosh, it's amazing how well it works. There's no drivers or anything. I mean, well, if there are, they're completely transparent to you. You just
it's all just hidden off behind the scenes. Yeah,
from your tablet, from your phone, from your OS. It's great, but
I love it. It's sort of very familiar for how Chromecast works. I don't know if you've ever played with a Chromecast, but the way the plugin for Chromecast sort of detects Chromecasts on the network, it's pretty straightforward.
That's really cool.
Sort of sniffs your network for printers that are broadcasting.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big one. There's some other improvements to Office for the iPad, like smart guides, which are sort of when you're dragging and dropping shapes and things around on the page, and it'll show you when you're at the same distance between different objects and things. So that's also included.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, and for those of you who are listening to this episode in the car, that's a siren from Houston. That's not one behind you.
They're coming for me.
Yeah, I can't stand that when I'm listening to something. All of a sudden, there's a siren on the radio, and I'm looking around like, "Where is that? I can't see his lights or anything."
Yeah. Sorry, it's outside.
Yeah, no worries. I'm looking out my window, seeing if it was in my neighborhood, so I figured it had to have been yours. Cool. Anything else that you saw this morning that it would be that you want to share with our listeners?
There were a couple of other Azure-related things that were pretty minor. I can't actually remember if they were talked about in the keynote, but I've noticed the news trickling out as part of the same press releases from TechEd. Support for capturing images, VMs in Azure with both the OS and the data drive connected. So being able to do one sort of snapshot with all of the different drives and things like that was pretty cool. On the same networking theme, we talked about ExpressRoute or Route if you're from here, and but the other one was multiple site-to-site VPNs. So that was kind of cool. Which was, we talked about this in a show or two ago when we spoke about the course up on curb.com, the Azure course. But about one of the posts in that series is about showing you how to set up a point-to-site VPN between your laptop and Azure. But you can also do those site-to-site VPNs between your firewall and Azure. And also now you can do multiple of those site-to-site VPNs. So this is good if you've got 2 offices in different parts of the world or different parts of the country or what have you. And you can set up multiple VPNs site-to-site from on-prem to Azure.
Wow.
Which is kind of nice. So it's all, makes it easy to connect everything all up. And so you've got access to the same things. And then in similar vein, you can also connect Azure to Azure. So I know that sounds a little wacky and confusing, but you might have, say you've got a whole bunch of virtual machines in a European data center, and you've got a whole bunch of virtual machines in a US data center. Now you can connect the different virtual networks on those different Azure data centers together, so machines can talk across VNets.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Some of these things,
slick.
Some of these features that they keep coming up with on Azure, they're doing it because there's a demand for it somewhere. But you keep hearing these things come up, and it's like, really? Somebody needs that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, the one that really piqued my interest as well was being able to reserve an IP. So I haven't dug into this too much. I just saw the announcement, but being able to maybe we touched on this a little while back. Maybe it was talked about at Build, but yeah, being able to reserve up to 5 IP addresses per subscription.
And 5 internal IPs, right? Or are they externals?
No, these are externals.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I think you can go get. I'm pretty sure you can go get. Yeah, they're externals, so you can go reserve them and point stuff at.
Oh, very cool. Lots of
Not
stuff.
Not bad. Oh, Azure is smashing it. They're just, I'm constantly impressed by the cadence that they get stuff out at.
Yeah, they're racing along. It's very nice to be involved. paying attention to what they're doing and being able to use their stuff. And it's you have to just you have to pick an architecture when you're on a project with if you're doing something in the cloud on Azure. You have to pick it, you have to stick with it, and not look at the shiny object that keeps coming out every few minutes.
I know.
Yeah.
I want to try this API management thing. That looks cool. As a developer, that makes me very sort of juiced up and excited about it.
Well, it does. I mean, even with the startup that we have with Curve, I know we've talked about doing an API, and it's kind of on our roadmap. And we put a little bit of thought into what it would take to go through and to host the API and stuff. And seeing this, it's like, oh no, wait a minute. So I just built the API, and you guys can do all that analytics stuff that we were having to check on and reverse lookups of where things are coming from, because you can't use like Google Analytics and something like that. So or you can't very easily, I should say. That's pretty.
You got to do a whole bunch of manual work, whereas this just out of the box, you get a whole bunch of really cool tools to cover a lot of those scenarios.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Nice.
Very cool. Well, sounds like you're got a whole lot of stuff just in the keynote, so maybe get a lot more news coming out later this week.
Yeah, I'll keep some notes. I'll try to get along to some sessions. I'm mostly working at the Office 365 booth on the expo floor. And I have a whole lot of meetings with various other partners and ISVs and that sort of thing. So that's keeping me busy. But I'll stay tuned for other news that I hear about. It's a massive expo floor this year, I've got to say. There's a lot of people exhibiting, so I want to try and get around and see what people are up to and other cool apps.
Well, very cool. Well, that's a good little update we got for everybody here. So I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. Is there anything else you want to add before we close up shop for the week?
No, I just say, thanks. Last time we made a call out for people to send in feedback and send in questions and things. And we got a bunch of that, which was really great. We can always do with more, so please keep it coming. But it was really reassuring that that people were listening and were keen to keep us on the ball to continue this. So that was a real help, and it was great to hear from everybody.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, we definitely want, I would say that would be something we want to add almost in every single show, is we always want to hear from you. We want more questions coming in. I guess we got lots of feedback, but we didn't get many questions other than just show ideas, which we very much appreciate. We got a lot of really good ideas of where we're going to go with some future shows, but just more feedback, put more questions in. All of it's definitely welcome. So I guess with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I guess until next time, we will talk again soon, CJ.
Yeah, thanks, AC.
All right. Everybody have a good one. If you have a question for us, go to microsoftcloudshow.com/questions, where you can submit it as text or record it as a WAV or an MP3 file and provide a link so that we can play your question on the show. You can subscribe to us in iTunes by searching for the Microsoft Cloud Show or via RSS at microsoftcloudshow.com, where you'll also find a full transcript and show notes of each episode. You can find us on Facebook searching for the Microsoft Cloud Show or on Twitter at MSCloudShow. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.